Welcome to Living Your Greatness. Each episode, we bring on great people to inspire you to achieve your greatness. We discuss topics all related to health and wellness. Listen to world-class stories, learn valuable lessons, and turn knowledge into action. It is now time for you to unlock your inner greatness. Welcome back, everyone, to the Living Your Greatness. This is your host, Ben Mummy, and today we have a new guest to the show, and his name is David Morrow. For those of you that don't know who Dave is the founder of David Morrow Personal Training, author of the Nimble Warrior, the host for the HRD2Kill Podcast, and a 15 veteran of the Canadian Armed Forces with a combat tour in Afghanistan in 2010 to 2011. Dave currently works for military veterans and serving members looking to optimize their performance, regain their peak military bodies, and become family role models. Dave holds a Master of Arts in Education Leadership and Administration from McGill University and was a high school teacher in science for many years at Loyola. Dave, it is a pleasure to have you on the show, so welcome to the podcast.
Man, Ben, thanks. That's a mouthful. Holy shit, you're right, man. That is a long intro. I've never been an intro like that. I'm feeling self-conscious already. Like, god damn, man. But thanks for having me here. I really appreciate it. For the folks that are listening, rest assured, the conversation is definitely not going to be as serious with me. With all those things that I've done, I guess it's good to hear from time to time. I've done some stuff. I got some legs under me, but I'm old, man. I'm almost 40. So I guess that stands to reason.
So Dave, let's get started. Tell us about yourself. Where did you spend your formative years growing up in Canada? What inspired you to become an entrepreneur? And why did you start a business in the fitness industry?
That's going way back, man. Way back before the internet existed. So formative years, man. I'm an 80s kid. So like I said, I'm pushing 40. So yeah, if your listeners are, under 30, let me just clarify, I guess, I grew up when you could still roam around your neighborhood when you're like 5 or 6 with your buddies causing trouble. I'm I would say a city boy, but grew up in the West Island, so I'm a suburb kid. And I don't know, it was a pretty typical upbringing from the time that I can remember. Rode a lot of bikes, played a lot of guns, wanted to be in the army, I guess, since I can remember. I just had this conversation with somebody else. Like, I always wanted to be in the military for whatever reason. So me and my best bud did join the military. He became a police officer after that. I carried on. And I did the typical things, like being a lifeguard, swam a bit, played a lot of different sports, jack of all trades, master of none. And then by the time I was 19, I was like, all right, it's time to shoot some guns and throw some grenades. So joined the Canadian Grenadier Guards here in Montreal. And it's a reserve unit with the Canadian Armed Forces. And from there, I guess that's when my learning process of how to be a man kind of started. Like, up until then, it was all fun and games, growing up, going to school, not really taking things seriously. And then that's when I realized I'm actually kind of good at something, which was the army. Like, I joined the infantry, and since I wasn't really that great at sports, I never really had any kind of thing to kind of base myself or judge myself off of when it comes to, physical performance or leadership or anything like that. But the military, just everything kind of came together, within the first week. I remember telling my course officer, so that's the person that kind of runs the course, you do interviews. Basically, they're just checking in to make sure you're not going nuts, because it's pretty demanding, right, for like an 18, 19-year-old kid to wake up at like 5 every morning, have these sergeants like yelling at you all day. Some just crack, they're just not used to it. I told him, like, sir, straight up, like, I fucking love this shit. And he's like, all right, you're gonna do really well in the infantry, get out of here. I was like, sweet. And yeah, from that point on, I was like, man, I just want to stay in the military and keep on doing well. So I just kept on moving up the ranks and doing courses here and there. And, with in the back of my mind, I was thinking, like, I definitely want to go deploy. I want to go find a war and fight. So Bosnia was still in the news. And so I wanted to go over there, but didn't work out. There just weren't any spots for me. So then I basically just waited out to Afghanistan in 2010. So I finally deployed to Afghanistan in 2010. So basically it took me 10 years to finally actually get to a war. And so, from there, all kinds of things happen. So I'm sure we can get into that, but that's, I guess, the long and short of it. And I mean, like the whole entrepreneur process came about after Afghanistan. Afghanistan was kind of an inflection point in my life that helped me become basically what I am now. And that was, roughly 10 years
So,
ago.
Dave, how did fitness come into your life, and what has the journey been like for you?
Yeah, fitness. So to go back to basically what we're talking about on the military side of things, I was never the fittest. I was never the strongest. I'm a tall, lanky kid. I was like $175 soaking wet in high school, but I'm 6'4". So I was just the tall, kind of gangly, skinny kid for a long time. And never really had a sport that I was really good at. I guess swimming was probably my best sport, but I didn't like it because I didn't like being in the pool and like 5, 6 a.m. Like you were a swimmer, eh? Like, I don't know, it didn't appeal to me, even though I was relatively good at it. I wanted to be like a NHL hockey star, but I sucked at hockey. Like I played football. I was okay at football, but I never really found my position. I was always on the line because I was just a big kid. But I wanted to always be the quarterback and stuff like that. But I never got a shot because I was just too big to be put in as quarterback. So I never really had my shot athletically until I really joined the military. And the military is basically just running really far, doing a lot of push-ups, doing pull-ups, and then throwing heavy shit in your back and walking and digging holes. That apparently I'm pretty good at, and that helped me gain a lot of confidence. So anything the military threw at me, or the infantry, it was just I didn't find it that demanding. I mean, it sucked, like it's mentally hard, but so that kind of gave me the confidence to be like, hey, I'm actually relatively good at this. Let's just put the pedal to the metal and see how far I can go with this. And so that's kind of where I realized like fitness for my job was really important, and I took it really, really, really seriously. And always saw myself as like the fit non-commissioned officer, and became a sergeant. I took it really seriously, so I always maintained my levels of physical fitness and was always in love with it. Like I always had Men's Health uh, subscriptions, and I always wanted to know like the next thing and the next training modality. And so I remember it was, when was that? I guess it was 2007, I think, where I got introduced to CrossFit. And it was during a summer tasking in Ottawa, and I had a platoon of guys, and I was responsible for their summer, essentially, for their training and everything like that. And one of the guys in the platoon, he's a bit more senior, and like we had kind of like we had a whiteboard, and we'd put up what was going on during the day, and then he put up on the board, he's like, hey, we're doing Fran tomorrow. And I'm like, I don't like where this is going. And so I pulled him aside. I'm like, what's this going on? Like, we're doing Fran, And he's like, no, it's a workout. And I'm like, oh, okay. Well, what does it entail? He's like, well, Sarge, why don't you come to the gym tomorrow, and we'll give you kind of a rundown. I was like, all right, check. So I showed up, and for your listeners, if you're not aware what Fran is, it's 2159 of pull-ups and thrusters, which, as my introduction to CrossFit, just the fact that, they told me the rep scheme, and I was like, what? Like 21 pull-ups, but not done? Like the 15, not like, how can you do 45 pull-ups? Like, well, you can do it kipping so anyways, pride and ego kicked in. I didn't know how to do any technical side. I didn't know how to kip and pull up. I didn't know how to do a thruster. I just muscled through it, RX. And I kid you not, I was sore for at least 2 weeks. Like I could barely do my job, but I fell in love. So that kind of kicked me into like another level of fitness that I didn't know of. And that was like the whole CrossFit world. And then I drank the Kool-Aid, and I went all in, and it was the basis of my training going to, into the preparation phase to go to Afghanistan. And like, I got to Afghanistan, and I was freaking strong. Like, I was ready to go. Actually, Michelle Letendre, before she started heading to the games, was actually my first CrossFit coach here in Montreal. And yeah, she kicked the shit out of me, man. It was really good. So from there, I guess that base of fitness, having come home, I got injured. That was really where I was like, wait, hold on a sec. Like, I thought it was fit. how did I get injured and why aren't I getting better? Like, why am I not able to kick this? I'm barely 30 at the time. And so that kind of led me down like another path of there must be something I'm missing. It must not be just all reps and like smashing PRs all the time. There must be something more. And that's where I started figuring out like, wait, okay, like I actually want to be a personal trainer. So I did my courses, and then I just needed to figure out how to fix my back and my knee, because that's what I injured when I was overseas. It wasn't like I was like I didn't get shot or anything like that. Like I said, like very common L5S1 herniation, double herniation in my back, and then patellofemoral syndrome, whatever you want to call it, with my knee. My knees just felt like I was like 85 years old all the time. Like they twisted a little bit, like I fell off a wall and kind of like jammed it up. And then it's like, man, I'm like, it shouldn't hurt this much going upstairs. And they'd be slipping all the time and I'd be buckling. And I was like, man, I'm like, this sucks. And the only thing I got from the military was basically take pills and like go to physio every now and then hope for the best. And then I just couldn't accept that. So, there was basically there's one incident where my back locked up so badly that I couldn't walk. I couldn't even like roll around in bed. I was in so much pain. And I just had my kid, my son, and I said, okay, this what I'm doing is not working. I need to figure it out. So that's when like fitness went to another level, and I got a coach. And then I was just like digesting every bit of like YouTube, books, you name it, to figure this shit out. And that's where I really started figuring things out for myself. And that's what translated into my business. Cause we have one saying in the military, it's basically like, it's always like help buddy. And buddy is like your fire team partner. It's the guy next to you. Like when you learn something, you pass it on right away. And so that was how I started with the fitness industry. It was basically, look, I learned how to kind of sort my back out, my knee out. It took me a few years. I want you to know that as well. And so I would go to units here in Montreal and just teach the basics. And that's how the business got started, man.
Dave, you are also a really great writer. You wrote a blog post, I got injured during the war. It's the best thing that ever happened to me. Dave, can you please share with our listeners why this is?
That was my inaugural blog post. And I remember what I was doing and where I was when I decided to write it. It was in the airport in Amsterdam. So I had taken a flight I was going to Spain, and I was going for a weekend, 4 days actually of business coaching for online trainers. It was one of these things. I was in a big transition in my life, and I knew I had to do something different. I'd left my teaching job. I was like, okay, I'm going to start this online fitness thing. And I just needed to be around successful people in order to get this started. And it just so happened to be like the only place that I could find. There was nothing here in Canada. Like there was nothing that appealed to me. There was this one mastermind essentially being done in Spain. So I convinced my wife. Thankfully, she said, yeah, okay. I cashed in basically all my points. I cashed in all my favors, you name it. And I was in the airport, and I was like, I'd been up for quite a while because I was waiting for a connecting flight to go back to go to Spain from Amsterdam. And I just had this overwhelming feeling. I'm like, I need to write a blog post. Like there's something that is on my mind about this whole journey, and I need to get this out. That's it. And I remember sitting down in the airport lounge essentially and whipping out my laptop, and it just poured out of me. It was just like it was just one of those very inspiring moments. Like I was so focused on what I had to write. And it wasn't that long, but it was very concise and to the point of what I was trying to get across, which was essentially the 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 fact that I got injured, and my initial response was like, shit, like this is going to be my life from now on. Like my back always hurts. I'm always grumpy because of it. I can barely take care of my kids. I can't lift them up. This is going to be me. And that attitude just became unacceptable. And I was like, this has to end. So I started on the journey to fix it. And I just felt that I couldn't just keep that to myself. And so I just started to write, and I started to write, and I started to write. And the reason why I said it was the best thing that ever happened to me, because if it hadn't happened to me, I don't think I would have been in the position to write a book, start a podcast, start a company that helps, members of the military and veterans to actually understand, like, wait, you can actually get better. Like I can fix myself to a certain extent and be in more control than what we're basically told. So that's where kind of it kicked off. And yeah, it landed pretty well. I remember I put it on LinkedIn, and I remember hitting I remember hitting send, and I was like I was sweating. I was like, oh my God. I was like, you have this like in the back of your mind, like somebody's going to call you out as like a phony, or like all these like negative thoughts that go through your head before you put something out into cyberspace. And since it was my first, I guess it was just one of those things that people weren't expecting. And I was just very, very honest. And I've just made sure that that's consistent through everything that I do. That I'm just very honest about my experience and what I'm doing, and it just landed really well. And so that just encouraged me to write more. To be
So,
honest.
Dave, you also wrote a book called The Nimble Warrior. Can you please share with our listeners what it is about?
Sure, man. So before I forget, I need to get my plug in. If you go to davemorrow.net/nimble, you can get yourself on the pre-sale list for the second edition. And the reason I'm saying that is that because the first edition was my first iteration of a manual that was never intended to be a book. It was intended to be like a 4-page PDF that was going to be distributed to the troops of one of the regiments here in Montreal, the Royal Montreal Regiment, because I did a seminar there where we just went over some basic topics on injury prevention and strength and conditioning for the infantry soldiers, so that they're all the young recruits, so they're all like 19 to like 24. Like, you guys are good now, like you probably have no injuries, but you will inevitably get overuse injuries or acute injuries. I want to make sure that you understand that you can fix yourself, but you need to do some of the prehab before you actually get into the job, because I compare the infantry basically to like almost like Olympic level athleticism, but you don't have the lead up training to get there. So the tasks that you need to do as an infantry soldier, they're pretty demanding. I mean, like anytime you needed to go like 10, 20 kilometers with like 50 to 60 to 70 pounds of gear on your back, that's kind of uneven, you're wet, you're tired, you're exhausted. Most athletes don't operate in pure physical, mental exhaustion. That's You're not going to perform, but that's how we're expected to perform. So, all the little things, your ankles, your knees, just your joints in general, you need to be able to be supple, you need to be nimble. You need to know your body well, so that when things start to flare up, how do you fix them? So that was the basics of my seminar. So the troops were like, man, we really like the module on self myofascial release, so SMR, like basically foam rolling and stuff like that. So it's like, okay, cool. I'll make a little handout, a little aid memoir for you guys. And so I started writing that. I was like, man, I got to put more context. Like this doesn't do it, So a little bit more context turned into more context, more context. And then, I had a small book by the end of it. And so I was like, well, rather than just kind of give this away for free, why don't I just put this out to market? And this is, it took me about a month and a half. Like I was just putting out everything that I'd learned from, more or less fixing my back and knee injuries out to the public. And so that was the first iteration of the book. So it's been out for about 2 years now, and yeah, it's been cool. Like it's not like a New York Times bestseller or anything like that, but if I've got well over 300 sales, because I've given a few $100s to Wounded Warriors Canada. So I give $1 for every book sale to Wounded Warriors. And with the second iteration, the goal is to just make it just that much better. And I think that I have. And there's going to be like a companion course, a video course that goes with it. And I'm just expanding on the topic a bit more, so that the goal has always been to just get more people out of the pain cave, get people moving better, and just realize that you can help affect, like your community a lot more positively if you're not always feeling shitty because your back hurts or your knee hurts. So it's really a message of positivity, and it's not just for military members. Like, we're all human beings. Because you're in the military, it doesn't mean like the exercises are different. It's just you need to focus on things a little bit differently. And there's not a lot of military specific information or training out there. that, is made and from a military individual's perspective, like my own. So that was, what I was initially targeting. But, anybody out there, like, I've had, my mother has used it. She's like, yeah, it's great for my ankle. So it's really anybody can pick up the book, and it's simple enough. I call it infantry proof. You can pick it up and figure out the exercises, no problem. And then if you're still want some more, there's going to be a video course that's going to go along with it. It's going to be released in July. So if you go to davemorrow.net/nimble, you can get on the pre-sale list and get all the info there.
So, Dave, why did you decide to be a personal trainer, and what qualities do you feel are important to build and work on as a fitness coach?
Like ultimately it's, yeah, you have to be curious, and you have to be able to adapt not only to the market, but you have to be able to adapt to your clients. And you have to be willing to make mistakes. So, I can't remember who it was that said, like, if I think it was Mark, it was either Marcus or it was one of the Stoics that, I'm paraphrasing, but if you look back at your past experiences and you don't cringe, then you're not growing, because that means like you've just stagnated and you're just like, oh yeah, that's just what I do. So, when I look back at the way I coached, the way I, done things in the past, I kind of podcasting, I do kind of cringe. I'm like, oh, I can't believe I used to do that. But from my perspective, that means I've grown and I've gotten better. And so that constant effort to grow is so important, because we're in an industry as personal trainers that it's easy to just flare out. Like you can have a great run, and then after a few years it's demanding and you get burnt out and you just drop it, or you don't innovate with the times. And COVID was a great experience for a lot of trainers, both negatively and positively. The ones that are able to adapt is just like evolution, right? In out in the wild, if you're able to adapt fast, you're going to survive. But if you can't and you're stuck in your own dogmatic ways, you lose your business. And so that's, there's a rush of trainers that were like, oh my god, I got to have an online platform. But the ones like myself that own, like, I had my physical face-to-face business that I didn't like, and I said I'm going into this as a online personal trainer where nobody was really doing it yet, because I felt that the model was much better, scalable, help more people faster, with better service, with better results. I'm like, this is a no-brainer. But that's where, a lot of trainers, they were just, able to make a good living with face-to-face stuff. But then when COVID hit and they're just like, oh my God, I can't see people face to face. What do I do? And they just started kind of flapping around in the wind, trying to like save their businesses. The ones that already had an established foothold and had already been like dabbling were much better off. So, that's the approach I take. Like the infantry teaches us like adapt and overcome. So that's how I approach business. And as a personal trainer, like if you're a personal trainer, that's cool. But ultimately you're your own small corporation. And if you look at yourself as a corporation, even if you're just one person, you will immediately start changing the way you do things, and not just want to necessarily train people, but you're going to look at your big picture, and you're going to look at your macros, you're going to look at your key performance indicators. And that's going to be, for a personal trainer just starting out, if you can have that mindset, like, hey, in a few years, I want to be here, then I want to be here, and I want to grow the empire, then you're in the right space. If you just want a job, that's a whole other different kettle of fish. Like you can have a job. There's nothing wrong with that, but don't expect to, be a millionaire from that. Like you're just going to be like any other job. And then you just probably won't have the legs to stay in. So, I would say like being able to adapt is probably your most critical attribute as a personal trainer, especially in this environment now.
Okay, great. So, Dave, what is the Hard to Kill podcast? Why is this business so important to you? It seems like there's a greater purpose behind it.
Yeah, you're absolutely right, man. That falls into the whole category of, if you want to grow the empire, if you want to be able to influence more people, if you want to have a, positive influence on your society or your chosen niche, you need to have something that's bigger than you. And mine has been to positively impact and change the military and veteran health culture. So since I started, that's been my goal, because I just felt like I was let down with a lot of other members, by our system, because we don't know what we don't know. Um, I, I know that had I had somebody, and I don't want to toot my own horn. So had I had somebody like Kelly Starrett or, somebody in that field before I got injured, or even when I was injured in the forces, to be like, no, look, you're banged up now. It hurts, but you can fix this. If somebody had just said that, I would have been like, oh, and my mindset was I'm broken and I'm like a shattered piece of glass. There's no way to put it all back together. So therefore, I guess I have to leave. And that's exactly what happened. I got medically released from the forces. But I feel now that I'm stronger, faster, fitter than I was 10 years ago. Like, yeah, my back kind of hurts every now and then, but whose doesn't? You know what I mean? Like, I just, up until that point, like I was really struggling day to day, not only just physically, but like psychologically as well. But once I was given the opportunity to think differently, where I listened to people that have overcome adversity and pain and stuff like that, and realized like there's there's a lot to it. There's a lot more to it than just taking pills and like occasionally going to see a physiotherapist. You can actually get over this. I was like, oh shit, like wow, okay. Well, if that's the case, then that's what I'm going to do. So my intent has always been to change that culture. So to gradually, and it's not just the podcast. Like I'm just a gorilla. Like I don't, I literally got on my hat. Like I don't. What do I know, right? So the intent has always been to interview the smartest people that know this shit inside out and backwards. So I mentioned Kelly Starrett already, but there's been so many good people on the podcast that it's amazing to hear their voices and to be able to disseminate that within our community. And like the 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 reaction to it and the feedback has been really cool, because I never really thought that was going to turn into anything, just like anything, right? Like humble beginnings. I just interviewed my friends essentially when I started, and anybody that wanted to get on the podcast. And so it's a fitness and health and mindset podcast, geared for the military, but it's, again, we're all human beings. So it's applicable basically anyway. Yeah, there's a lot of jargon in it, but the goal has always been to have that as a vehicle to influence the culture around fitness and health. And it's an awesome medium in order to do that, because anybody can listen to a podcast. It's freaking free. You just go on your phone, you go on your laptop, and you can listen to it in the car. You can listen to it while you're working out. So I love the format. And the goal, at the end of the day, is just to keep on growing this podcast, and just keep on having awesome guests, and keep on influencing the people in the military and the veteran culture to just get better. Because I truly believe that our society, like I'm talking like Canadian, like American, like all of us that fought during the last 20 years or so, in the quote unquote wars on terror, and we have so much untapped potential, that I can't stand to see veterans that are stuck because they're either injured, either physically, psychologically, or both, and basically crushed by the weight of you're broken, sit there and be disabled, don't do anything else. I can't stand that. It drives me crazy when I see veterans like that. So, I've helped veterans realize like, hey man, you can get up and start doing shit again. Like it's going to take a while. It's going to hurt. It's going to suck, but we can get you out of this, and we can get you moving again, and like helping your family and like helping the community. Like we just got so much potential that I just want to kind of unleash it as much as possible from, my platform is, and that's basically it.
Dave, I noticed there's a slogan that you go by: strong people are hard to kill. What do you mean by this?
Yeah, I totally stole it from CrossFit. Uh, um, well, essentially, so there's a few things I had in the back of my mind from CrossFit. So, I mean, anybody that's been to a CrossFit gym has probably seen that slogan. I think it comes from Kelly Bergner, but I'm not 100% sure who said it first. Anyways, so it's kind of like passed around as like a mantra in there. And I remember I went for a run, and it was just like rattling in my brain, because I was like, well, what do I call my training programs and stuff? And one thing that's always been in the back of my mind, and I'm glad that a savage like Joe Rogan talked about it on one of his podcasts, saying essentially like when he's in the gym and he's training, like he gets fired up thinking about like somebody like coming to attack his family and like or having to run and like save his family. Like it's in the back of his mind, like I gotta get stronger, I gotta get faster. Like if this happens, I gotta be able to like act. And when I'm in the gym, not every time because I'm a lot more mentally stable now, but I think about that. I'm like I'm nearing 40, but if I need to like boogie and like get my family out of danger, do I have that capacity? Like, is my back good enough? Am I strong enough? Am I fast enough? Do I have the endurance or am I just going to crumble? And so that's why, I base like the hard to kill thing based on like, it's not only survival, like in the shittiest situations, but also it's a longevity thing. So by being strong, yeah, physically strong is really important. The research is very clear on that. Like if you maintain a certain level of like bone density and muscle density over the span of your lifetime, you have a much lower chance of all-cause mortality. So, how do you do that? Well, training is a really good thing, but then you have nutrition and then you have recovery. And so how do you ensure that overall you're hard to kill? Well, you got to look at the whole system. And that includes mindset. That includes, like your cellular metabolism. That includes not just your fitness, but everything else that goes with it. Like, are you learning shit? Like, are you reading books? So that's why I have on the podcast a wide variety of you know uh, guests that are not necessarily in the health and fitness space. I like having authors on because expanding your ability to think and incorporate new ideas will make you hard to kill. So that's the, I guess, the ethos behind it, or the philosophy behind it, is that you need to have this picture of yourself as the individual and be indignant to like anything that is going to try and take you out, whether it's disease or just, poor nutrition or just complacency. Like just get aggressive. Like don't accept that you're just going to like live to 72 and kind of have a shitty last 6-7 years and then peter out. Like, no, man, like aggressively fight against it. And so that's where the strong people are hard to kill thing comes from, essentially.
So, Dave, being an entrepreneur is not easy. There can be many successes, but there could also be failures. What has been your biggest failure, and what did you learn from it?
My biggest failure starting out was not communicating my intent to my wife. I was epically miserable as a teacher, and I didn't know why. I had this idea in the back of my mind that I wanted to be a business owner. I wanted to have a fitness business for a long time. Never communicated it. And what it did was just create a lot of tension because I I I easily go from off to on. As soon as the switch gets flipped, that's it. Like, and I won't consult. I'll just do. And for my wife, that didn't make any sense. She's like, "What do you mean? Like, what do you mean you're leaving your job? Like, this doesn't make any sense." Like, I was like, "Yeah, I can't teach anymore. Like, I've been telling you, I've been miserable." But she's like, "Yeah, but where's this whole entrepreneur thing coming from? Like, where do we have the money for it? Like, like you're not making any money now." So I would say that wasn't a clear, defined kind of switch. That was um, something that I wish I'd done a lot better, and that was definitely a failure on my part. Was not improving my comms, my communication to my wife in the entrepreneur space. Because ultimately, whether your wife or your significant other is part of the business itself, if you're getting into entrepreneurship and you have a significant other, they are now part of your journey, whether you want them in there or not, because your highs and lows, their highs and lows, the entrepreneurship is all encompassing. It's so demanding. So they're going to end up, if they're not involved physically, they're going to be involved some other way. They're going to see the fallout of you being gone all the time, working, 13-hour days. Like they're going to be involved. So you better communicate that well ahead of time and get them prepared. Because if you're going to do it, you need their support.
So, Dave, for our listeners, what advice would you give to someone who is just starting out on their fitness journey?
So ultimately, I'm a habit-based coach. So um, if you're starting out, like going to see a coach right away, and I'll suss that out for somebody who's looking for coaching right out of the gate. I've just declined people straight up. I'm like, you know what? before you jump into a program where like, I'm going to put a lot of effort into you, you're going to put a lot of effort into me, I don't think you're quite ready because you're missing a lot of the key steps. And the key steps are essentially like, what habits have you set up for success in the fitness space? And what I typically say is like, well, have you even like done anything remotely, you know, physical in the last month? And I'm not talking like going up the stairs and like, I'm talking like, did you dedicate even 10 minutes of any part of your day just to say like, I'm going to take care of myself at this point? And if the answer is no, it's like, okay, well, that's got to come from you. And like, I can help you with that journey, but ultimately you got to make that decision. And it's got to be a really easy, quick win. So, typically, people want to start with like, I want to start doing squats and I want to start like, well, look, man, like you can want to start all that, but there's a lot of steps to like, if you want to go to the gym and let's say get into a bar, like think of all the steps you need to do in order to make that happen. Like, well, A, you need to have a membership. B, you need to like get in your car or whatever to get to your gym. You need to put on all your shit. You need to have it all ready. You need to like know what exercise to do. You need to know actually how to do it. And then you need to execute. So there's a series of steps there. Well, every one of those steps is a potential failure point. So why don't you just make things really simple, man? Like devote 2 weeks. Say, like, I'm gonna take 2 weeks, and for the next 2 weeks, I'm gonna devote 10 minutes to, and you pick it. And it's always gonna be something you like. And so if people are gonna be successful, like if they're starting from scratch, that is always like the first point. Don't go see a coach, man. Don't go see a coach. Like the coach will guide you once you have something at least basically set up. Like and so if it's a walk, cool, go for a walk. If you like doing push-ups, cool, do 5 push-ups, but just do it every day. And once you have that consistency set up, then you can start moving forward. So the consistency is king. And so you can, set it up on your whiteboard, set it up on your fridge, just put a check mark, whatever. And then you can visually see like what's moving forward. And then once you have that set up, then you can move forward. And I think the biggest thing is just getting the blinders put on for most people, not focusing on everything that's going on the internet. Stop looking at Instagram. Stop thinking that you're going to look like whoever you're admiring on the Instagram. They've been doing this for like 15 years to get there, man. It's frustrating if that's where you want to go in like 6 months. It's not going to happen. So where do you want to be, and then just start visualizing that goals. And then the coach can, like myself or my team, can help you figure out those goals together and, make them realistic. Like if you want to be fit for the military, it doesn't mean you have to look amazing. It just means you have to be fit for the military. So if that's the case, then you got to make your goals reflective of that. So then you can start working with the coach to figure that stuff out. But ultimately, the first step is just set up some consistency, stick to it. And then once you have the consistency at a base level, then start working on more progressively hard stuff.
So that actually brings me to my next question. What is your 5-minute daily fitness habit that you would recommend to almost anyone?
Yeah, man. Well, I mean, my 5 minutes is every morning. I do it more in 5 minutes, but is just I call it like turning the engine on. I basically like this morning I actually slept in the basement because my wife's ill, so it was keeping me up. So yeah, I was like, screw it, I'll just go sleep on the couch, and I have a great sleep on the couch. And I still have a hard time getting up in the morning, man. It doesn't matter like how much Jocko Willink I listen to, like get up, get after it. I'm still like, oh fuck. And so I literally roll off the couch and I lie there and I just like, okay, here we go. And I just do a bit of breathing work, a bit of ab work. I have a little like yoga flow that I came up with to keep my back okay. Like I do some like down dog, I do some like cobra. Um, and that just gets the blood flowing. And then within like the first few minutes, I'm like, okay, all right, I'm starting to wake up a little bit. I do a little bit of squatting. I might throw in a light kettlebell swing in there. I do a bit of push-ups, maybe some sit-ups, but ultimately I'm not burning anything, like high octane here. Like it's really slow. But if you can keep that habit consistently, and it can be anything, 5 minutes of anything just for you. Like it just gets the body moving, man. And I would say like if you can keep your hips in good working order, so like open up the hips so you can, either get into a squat position, get a Samson stretch going on, get a foam roller on the hips. That's the major linkage point between your, torso and your lower body. If those are working well, man, like it's just like anything, man. It's like getting suspension ready or whatever, like make sure it's tuned up. That's how I start the day. So it doesn't have to be anything intense. Just consistently apply the 5 easy minutes. You'll notice a difference. It's like I say, the long game's the only game in town. So if you play that game, man, you'll be fine. Like 15 years from now, much better than your buddy who does like one or two really hard workouts every week, but then doesn't do anything else. You're doing something every day. That's kind of the name of the game. I'm always thinking longevity. Like my goal is to win the CrossFit Games when I'm 75. Like the 75-year-old class. As long as Rich Froning isn't in that category when I'm there, I'm just waiting for everybody else to attrit and just like be wiped off the map, and then I'll just be like, just be my regular self and be like, yeah, I just kept it up, man, because I'm not going to win it anytime soon. So 75 is my goal.
Dave, who are your most impactful mentors in developing your business?
The first two that come to mind, and they won't say they're mentors of mine because they're buddies of mine, but my buddy Boris and my buddy Steve, they were buddies from the military, but they're also entrepreneurs as well. And they, they were, like really influential. Like I spent a lot of time, I still do, like we're still bros, but just asking them questions like, man, how was it like starting out, like, and just, it sucked. They're like, yeah, the first 2 years, like it sucks. Like you're not making any money. People don't know what you're doing. You don't really have any influence, and you just got to keep on grinding until it actually grows into something. And they both have very successful businesses right now. And they're family men. They've built their empires, with their kids, and we all started from the same spot. We all started in the military, kind of not knowing what we wanted to do. We all went to university and kind of like bummed around there and like didn't really know. And like even my degree, like I got a master's degree in education, and I don't like, it was, the goal is to be a principal. I'm not really using it. Granted, I'm in a teaching space as a coach, but ultimately I'm more in the business space now. And same with my buddies too. They all have like degrees in history and stuff like that. So, the goal, I guess, at that point was, you learn in university how to think essentially and how to apply like critical thinking patterns. So we all had that same kind of upbringing as young men, and now they're much further along the path than I am. So I look to them as mentors in that sense. And then I would say, it's really interesting the people you kind of bump into as you start growing a business and how they influence you, even if it's a very small amount of time you spend with them. I had a really, really awesome conversation, series of conversations with a mentor who's got a great podcast down in the States. And he's a military member as well. And we just had a few chats, and like he really helped me set my podcast up for success at around episode like 12. And he just said, yeah, just fix this, 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 and this. And I was like, whoa. I was like, cool. And same with my book too. It was another like acquaintance that happened to be a military member as well. He wrote a book, and he really helped me with setting up my book to start. And then it gave me a lot of confidence because he invited me to this big speaking gig in Toronto in Niagara Falls for Domino's Pizza, and I'm speaking to like hundreds of people in an auditorium. I'm like, whoa, what am I doing here? So like these people along the way really helped me, in every every, I guess, aspect of the business, book, podcast, coaching, etc. Have been really influential along the way. And, I'd even say like, although I paid for a lot of I did pay for a lot of coaching to set my business up. Along the way, they definitely acted as mentors as well. So like Dave Smith from the Online Trainers Federation, Canadian, just really honest, awesome dude. Had a really good system. And I spent about a year with them, just, grinding it out, figuring out the business aspect of an online business, not just a regular business. And we're still in communication now. So, like those people if you're setting up anything in the business space, if you don't have mentors and people that you can like rely on to ask questions, get something back from them to help you along the way, like you're kidding yourself. You'll never grow. You can start out with nothing, but you eventually have to branch out and surround yourself with the people that are successful, because that success will be contagious. And so that's, that's the key to, in my opinion, for entrepreneurship, is to surround yourself with those people that have done it. And so you can learn from them so that you can go faster and fail faster, so that you can grow faster, essentially, because it's basically your rate of success is directly proportional to the amount of failures you can get out of the way the fastest. And so yeah, so I mentioned failure at the start there, but then I've had like like I'm still failing at things. It's nonstop failure for a few successes, and if you can't accept that, then you're never going to make it in the entrepreneur world.
So, Dave, if there was one thing that you could change in the fitness industry, what would it be?
I would say that it would be how to make it more legitimate. Um, the in my opinion, it's the fitness coach, the professional fitness coach, that's going to have some like the greatest impact on our society moving forward with respects to health, because it's not the doctor. It's not the athletic therapist. It's the fitness coach who has the broad view of what's going on with you, because we're in a really big inflection point right now with respects to health. Like we're crushing here in Canada anyways. We have a public system that needs to pay for everybody's health issues. We're going to be crushed under the weight of chronic disease, diabetes, coronary heart disease. And these are all diseases that are preventable through holistic health and fitness. Now, your doctor doesn't do that. Your doctor, the analogy I use is, if you're going to go swim, you could jump into the ocean and you start drowning. The lifeguard will come and save you. Now, that's basically like a doctor. A doctor's role is to ensure you don't die. But at no point do they give you swimming lessons. Well, I guess sometimes they do, but in the moment, like they're not giving you swimming. Who's going to give you swimming? It's the swim coach. So who's the swim coach? Well, the swim coach is the fitness coach. Is the one that's like, well, you're eating like dog shit, man. Like, look at all the crap you're putting in your bodies. Of course that you're gonna have to get, like see a doctor. Or in the case of like jumping into the ocean, like you didn't learn how to swim. What did you expect? Of course you're gonna drown. Like you're gonna kill yourself. Stop doing this. So you need to put the reps in, and you need to learn about your body. You need to learn about nutrition. You need to learn about sleep. You need to learn about recovery. These are things we don't go over growing up. Nobody does. And it's unfortunate. Like you need that kind of background knowledge, because ancestrally we just had an intuitive understanding of how we need to live. We need to go outside. You need to get some sun on yourself. You need to eat some meat. You need to eat some good veggies. You need to sleep. You need to interact with other human beings in a positive way. And you need to be fulfilled by whatever you're doing. This isn't new. This is what all the ancient, Stoics and philosophers wrote about for thousands of years. It's only recently that we kind of short circuited that. And it's like, no, stay inside, sit at a desk all day, do something that you don't really like, wait for your pension, and then die. And by the way, stuff yourself with dog shit that we sell on TV, because we know better. We know better. It's good for you. We invented it in a lab. It's good for you. It's not. It's killing us, man. So we just don't even have the basic knowledge to live life properly anymore. And we wonder why we're sick and fat and unhealthy. It's going to be the fitness coach that is going to break that model, and it's happening. There's cool clinics in the States that they have a doctor that it heads the clinic, but you also have the coaches there that are not doctors. They're people like myself that have a really good background in fitness, health, and nutrition, and they start fixing people with chronic illnesses, because most of the illness is due to the like modern Western life, not sleeping well, eating whatever, shit tons of sugar, unhealthy foods, and not taking care of your body because they don't even know what it is to take care of your body. So I think that's going to be, moving forward, like the single most important thing is to legitimize the business. And I'm not smart enough to figure out what that is going to look like, or how that's going to look, or what needs to happen. But, the the image of the fitness industry is basically kind of like skeezy, like guys that are kind of trying to rip you off and trying to sell you the latest, like fanciest new like program or whatever. But ultimately a good trainer is a lifesaver. And I think that's going to become more and more and more apparent in the coming years. And I'm hoping to be a part of that movement going forward. So
Okay, great. So where could our listeners go to connect with you online, Dave?
so many places. Let's see if I can remember them, man. I've noticed anybody that's above like the age of 30 when it comes to like handles on the internet, it's like, shit. Let me see here. So let me see if I got them all. So the easiest one is go to my website, davemorrow.net. You can find my podcast. You can find my blog. You can find a bit of merchandise. You can basically find everything there. You can also go on Facebook. I'm very active on Facebook. And you can go to Dave Morrow PT. So that's me on Facebook. And you can go to my Facebook page. You can also join my Facebook group. I'm very selective who gets in though. So you can drop me a request to get into the Facebook group. It's mostly military and police and first responders, but I do make exceptions for cool people to join the group. And that's where we do a lot of lives and we do a lot of content drops and stuff like that for the members of the group. So I like making sure that they get a little special something for joining the group. Additionally, you can find me on Instagram. So again, that's Dave Morrow PT, I believe. Dave Morrow _PT. Crap. I can't remember. See, I'm already screwing up. And same with Twitter. You can find me at Dave Morrow PT or HRD2Kill Pod. So that's HRD2Kill Pod. That's on Twitter. So that's where you can find kind of like my rambling thoughts on guests and what I'm going to post. And I do surveys and stuff there. So I'd love you to follow me at Twitter at HRD2Kill Pod. That'd be great. And man, LinkedIn, just my name. Like I'm all over the place. So it's if you do a Google search, I'm not the first Dave Morrow that pops up. There's a really good photographer that pops up that I'll probably try and get on podcasts as well. But I'm usually the second one that pops up as well. So yeah, you can find me there, and then you can always write me an email at dave@davemorrow.net, and we can have a chat there too. I'm not shy to put my email address out there. So yeah, I think that covers it off, man. I think that's everything.
Sounds good, Dave. So I'll make sure to add that to the podcast notes. And once again, Dave, I want to take the time to thank you for being on the show today.
Sweet. Yeah. Thanks for having me on, man. I really appreciate it. It's cool to see, dude, I was your teacher. Like you were the first round of students I ever had. I was like 25, 26. It was a long time ago, man. So it's cool to see your journey as well and your progress and continued success with the podcast and the business. And it's going to be cool to see where you're at in 10 years, man.
Thank you for listening to the Living Your Greatness podcast. If this show has added value, please subscribe, leave a rating, and make a review.